There and Back Again, A Goggins Tale, Part 1. Welcome to our new video, where we explore an intriguing what-if scenario. The Lord of the Rings certainly had its fair share of hard warriors. But what if we sent one of our own? What if David Goggins was the 12th member of the Fellowship of the Ring? We begin our journey in the village of Bree. Gandalf the Grey has left a letter of great urgency with the forgetful innkeeper of the Prancing Pony, Barlaman Butterbur, with instruction for it to be delivered to Hobbiton, while he himself departs in pursuit of the ring wraiths, in hope the letter will find its way to Frodo before it's too late. The letter warns him to depart for Rivendell immediately and to look out for a man called Aragorn on his journey, for he is a man who can be trusted and will help him. Unfortunately, Butterbur was unable to find a messenger the following day or the next day. On the third day, he forgot his duty entirely. That is, until a strange-looking newcomer to Bree entered his tavern after dark. The appearance of the strange-looking man, drenched in sweat with the top of his bald head giving off steam like a billowing kettle, caused a nervous silence to descend upon the merry inhabitants, who eyed him warily, hands inching toward their weapons. "Good evening, friend," welcomed Butterbur, masking his surprise. "How may I assist you?" "Help! I ain't no bitch," the man snapped back, his tone direct and unyielding. Taken aback by this response, Butterbur carefully navigates the conversation. "My apologies. I meant no offense. Might I inquire who you are and whence you came?" "I'm a United States Army Ranger. Name's Goggins, and I'm from America," Goggins responded. He seemed unable to stand still for long, shifting on the balls of his feet like a horse raring to go. "A ranger, you say?" repeated the barman loudly, causing a murmur to run through the packed room of onlookers. "What brings you to Bree?" "I'm heading to Hobbiton," declared Goggins. "On what business, if I may ask?" asked Butterbur, finally recalling Gandalf's letter and sensing an opportunity to fulfill his old friend's request. "I met some old dude called Gandalf on Weathertop yesterday, who asked me to check on some little bitches in Hobbiton." "Weathertop? But that's 100 miles away." Butterbur gasped, awe-stricken. "You covered that distance in a day?" "Yes, sir." "And you met Gandalf?" "Yes, sir." "Then, might we speak privately?" Butterbur suggested, leading Goggins to a secluded room away from prying ears, generally reserved for hookers. Once alone, Butterbur spoke openly. "Gandalf left a letter with me for Mr. Underhill in Hobbiton. It's urgent. Since you're headed there and seem to be on similar business, would you be so kind as to deliver it?" "No shit. Gandalf asked me to find Mr. Underhill as well. He said he'd fuck you up if you hadn't sent it, but hey, I'll deliver it now," replied Goggins, taking the letter from Butterbur. "I'm eternally grateful, Mr. Goggins, sir. In that case, I'll prepare a room for you to rest before you depart," Butterbur offered. "I ain't no bitch. We're good to go now, baby. I'll reach Hobbiton by tomorrow evening." "But it's 120 miles to Hobbiton," exclaimed Butterbur in disbelief. "Surely your steed will require rest." "Don't have one because I'm not a pussy. I don't stop when I'm tired. I stop when I'm done," retorted Goggins, who had returned to bouncing on the balls of his feet like a crackhead itching for his next fix. "Stay hard," he bellowed, spit flying from his mouth. With a sharp nod, Butterbur quickly provided directions and advice for the journey ahead. "Very well then. Safe travels." Without another word, Goggins left to begin his 120-mile cross-country run to Hobbiton. "What an odd fellow," said Butterbur aloud to himself before he rejoined the congregation. Goggins' journey to Hobbiton was quite smooth for the most part, aside from a couple minor inconveniences along the way, including an altercation with Farmer Maggot and his large dogs, but Goggins had been warned of the overly grumpy farmer and remained undeterred. "I'ma fuck you up, Maggot," he shouted without looking back at the pursuing farmer as he continued without stopping to deal with the situation. At the 100-mile mark, Goggins shit himself, but again chose not to interrupt his run, as he was still making good pace towards his destination. He arrived at Hobbiton shortly after sunset the following day. Checking the address on the envelope, which was now smudged as he had used it to wipe his ass of the excess shit many miles before. Still, he could just about discern the wizard's spidery handwriting beneath the brown marks. As dusk settled over Hobbiton, David Goggins reached the round green door of Bag End. After a brief moment to adjust the now nearly illegible envelope, he knocked firmly. "Open up, motherfucker," he said, knocking loudly. The door soon opened, revealing a puzzled Frodo Baggins, unprepared for both the sight or stench that invaded his nostrils. "Good evening," Frodo managed, his nose wrinkling slightly as he took in the towering, sweat-soaked figure. "Can I help you?" "Got a letter from Mr. Underhill." "Urgent stuff from Gandalf," Goggins replied, handing over the stained envelope, which Frodo took gingerly, doing his best attempt to avoid the worst of the caking around the edges. While Frodo read the contents, Goggins, restless as ever, started lunging across the manicured garden. Frodo glanced up just in time to see Goggins shift from lunges to sprints, his physical prowess unmistakable. A postscript in the letter caught Frodo's eye. "By some called Strider." "Well, he certainly is a Strider," Frodo mumbled to himself, watching Goggins now tackle pull-ups on a low-hanging branch of the party tree. Sam, ever protective, leaned in and whispered, "Gandalf wouldn't have sent him if he weren't trustworthy." Both hobbits now stood in silence, observing the stranger before them, who seemed to embody the energy of the Shire itself through his endless exertions. It was then Sam voiced a naive concern. "The big folks are quite peculiar, and I've never seen a black one before. Is he one of those black riders Gandalf warned us about?" Frodo chuckled softly, reassuring his friend. "No, Sam, he's not one of the Black Riders. I can't imagine them bringing letters from Gandalf. The letter also has a postscript, which I believe matches this messenger. This Strider is a man, lean, dark, and tall." "He's certainly dark," shrugged Sam. "All that is gold does not glitter. No, my dear Sam, I'm afraid the darkest thing about him is the smell. It stings the nose, but it is not foul as I would expect of the servants of the enemy." Reassured, Sam nodded, though he still watched Goggins with a mixture of awe and slight bewilderment. Meanwhile, Frodo folded the letter, considering the strange yet compelling presence this man brought into their peaceful world. As Goggins finally paused his physical feats to catch his breath, Frodo invited him inside. "Come, Mr. Strider. Let's discuss this letter more comfortably over a meal. You must be famished after such a journey. Let's go, motherfuckers," shouted Goggins as he stepped into the warm, inviting hobbit hole. After taking up Frodo's offer of a bath before supper, Goggins stepped out into the dining room in a spare set of wizard's robes left behind by Gandalf the last time he had visited. "This shit's comfy as hell," said Goggins, fist-bumping Frodo. "You're most welcome. So, friend of Gandalf, what do we call you?" asked Frodo. "Goggins," he responded simply. "Very well, Mr. Goggins. Gandalf's letter urged that I leave at once, and I had intended on waiting till my birthday, but I think we should leave the day after tomorrow. That should give us enough time to pack up and prepare." "Stop being a little bitch," shouted Goggins. Taken aback, Frodo thought for a minute before revising his plan. "You're right, Mr. Goggins. Fine. It is better to be cautious and leave earlier than risk being late. We'll leave tomorrow morning after breakfast. Sam, can you make the arrangements?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Frodo, sir," responded Sam. "He your bitch?" inquired Goggins. "He's my gardener," replied Frodo, politely correcting Goggins and gesturing him to the seat by the fire. "So, what did Gandalf tell you?" "Is he coming?" asked Frodo. Goggins hesitated a moment before responding. "He mentioned something about destroying your ring. Sounded hella gay, but I got no problem with that man." "Gay? Then he must have had some good news regarding my ring," said Frodo, feeling a small wave of optimism about the impending journey he was about to undertake. After all, Gandalf had been gay when speaking to Goggins. He supposed it could only have been good news that had made the wizard happy. Where is he now? Will he meet us on the way? Continued Frodo eagerly. He's gonna see another wizard guy who might be able to help. Destroy your ring, he said, replied Goggins awkwardly, not expecting the direction this conversation had taken. Would you like to see it? Asked Frodo excitedly, having taken a liking to this friend of Gandalf's. Hey bro, I'm not into that shit, bro. Like it's cool if you are, but that ain't me, responded Goggins, recoiling slightly as a wave of fear washed over him. Like the time P. Diddy had brushed past him at an award ceremony. He shivered despite the roaring fire. I sometimes find myself fingering it, continued Frodo. All hell no, shouted Goggins, feeling revulsion at the sight of the little halfling. He's trying to take my soul, thought Goggins, desperately trying to recall his Navy SEAL training. He couldn't let that happen. He had to find a way to outgay this little homosexual creature and guard against any advances. What happens when you do? He asked Frodo. It disappears when you put a finger inside. I disappear. This little motherfucker's got a magic asshole, thought Goggins. Frodo went on. It feels cold now. It's been so long since I've slipped my finger inside it. How many have used your ring? Asked Goggins bravely. Well, my uncle Bilbo, and before him, Gollum, Frodo replied. Your uncle? Spat Goggins in disgust. I think that's enough for one night, he said, standing up abruptly and making a mental note not to fall asleep around this perverted little deviant. I've had Sam prepare the spare bedroom. It's the last door on the left. The next morning, after a restful night and a hearty breakfast provided by his gracious host, the group set out through the morning mist, leaving a still slumbering Hobbiton behind. As they ventured forward, Goggins reflected on his conversation with Frodo the previous night. While he still didn't understand how destroying the Hobbit's overused ring would save the world, he decided he would continue with the mission he had committed to like a good soldier, no matter how hard it got. After all, it wasn't the strangest thing he'd ever heard of. He set a ferocious pace in the wizard's robes, feeling duty-bound to cuss out the hobbits for falling behind at regular intervals. Eventually getting sick of the lazy fuckers and opting instead to carry the two hobbits much of the way until they got to Farmer Maggot's farm, and after a brief altercation in which Goggins thoroughly assaulted the bad-tempered farmer and frightened off his dogs, they were back on their way. Arriving at Frodo's new residence at Crickhollow, where Merry and Pippin awaited them with ponies readied for the journey ahead. There they spent the night and enjoyed the mushrooms Frodo and Sam had quietly acquired while Goggins had been dealing with the farmer before, continuing on the next leg of their journey, now accompanied by Merry and Pippin. Stay hard, bellowed Goggins, startling the weary hobbits as they arrived at the Gate of Bree the following evening. As they entered the prancing pony, they were greeted by a mixture of curiosity and wariness from the locals. Butterbur, the innkeeper of the prancing pony, upon noticing the group's entrance, did a double take. His eyes widened in recognition as they landed on Goggins. Pushing through the bustling crowd, Butterbur approached them, his expression one of awe and gratitude. Mr. Goggins, he exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. Never in my years have I seen a message delivered with such incredible speed. You've outdone even the swiftest of our messengers. I heard tell of your swift passage through the land. You've done a great service, and I'm mightily impressed. Goggins nodded, accepting the praise with a modest grunt. They don't know me, son. Butterbur leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a confidential whisper. I must warn you, though, he said, glancing nervously toward the shadowed corner of the inn. There's a man here, goes by the name of Strider. He's been asking after the hobbits, and if he means good, then I'm a hobbit. The group's attention shifted subtly towards the corner Butterbur had indicated. There, a tall, cloaked figure sat alone, his face obscured by the hood of his cloak, sipping his drink quietly, but with an air of alertness. Strider, eh? Goggins mused aloud, his gaze fixed on the mysterious figure. Frodo, recalling the postscript in Gandalf's letter, felt a twinge of recognition. Gandalf mentioned him in his letter, called him a friend, Frodo informed Goggins, who looked back at him with a raised eyebrow. I think I'll go talk to him, Goggins said nonchalantly, making his way across to the lone figure in the corner. As Butterbur left them to attend to his other guests, the hobbits watched anxiously as Goggins approached the mysterious Strider, ready to draw weapons should the need arise. There and Back Again, A Goggins Tale, Part 2. The inhabitants of the Prancing Pony watched with bated breath as the strange dark man from the previous night now approached the cloaked Strider, sat at a shadowy table at the back of the room. Strider looked up as the man neared his table, a subtle, almost imperceivable shift under his cloak as he grasped his weapon in case of attack. Outwardly, he gave no reaction as Goggins reached him. Yo, what's up, homie, said Goggins, towering above the seated Strider. You got a thing for little children? Like Epstein? Strider was momentarily taken aback by the outlandish speech. His tongue is uncouth, yet it does not sound like black speech, he thought. Perhaps he is just an uncommonly large ruffian. I do not understand your meaning, traveler. Who are you? My name's Goggins. Who are you? I am by some called Strider. What is your business with the hobbits? My own motherfucking business. That's what business I have, Goggins responded, clenching his fists at the suspicious man. Then whom do you serve? Pressed Strider warily, preparing to unleash his sword if his suspicions proved true, that Goggins was a spy for the enemy that had managed to ensnare the ring-bearer. I serve the United States of America. Then you are from foreign lands? Around them, the inn remained tense. All watched the two men, expecting things to kick off at any moment. So, what business have you with the hobbits? Asked Strider once again. Goggins paused before responding. He decided to follow his gut instinct and see what direction this Strider took based on his information. I was sent by Gandalf to protect these little fuckers. Gandalf, gasped Strider, not expecting this turn of events but still not letting down his guard. I have also been tasked by Gandalf to find and protect the hobbits. Take a seat, friend. Our paths are aligned for the time being. Share with me the details of your last meeting with Gandalf. And so, Goggins took a seat at the table and filled Strider in about running into Gandalf at Weathertop and the old wizard asking Goggins to help find and protect them, and his later agreement to aid the hobbits in reaching Rivendell safely. So you are no spy, it would seem. My apologies. I had to be careful. There are spies everywhere, and you are as dark as any servant of Mordor I have seen. That's fucking racist. I meant no insult by it, friend, said Aragorn swiftly, raising a hand in apology. You spoke of your service to your country. You were a soldier then? United States Army Ranger. Survived 3 hell weeks. Strider nodded understandingly. Hell indeed. The job of a ranger is a lonely one, fraught with perils and hardship. Heavy is its toll upon the body, said Strider, lowering his hood to reveal an extremely weather-beaten face covered in scars. Damn, brother. You look like she took your house, car, and your kids. With a face like that, your life must be hell. I am Chief of the Rangers of the North. Fuck yeah, said Goggins, leaning forward and fist-bumping Strider. I respect the grind, brother. So what's the plan, Chief? Are you coming to Rivendell with us? I will join you on the journey, but the road is perilous. It could take us more than 2 weeks, depending on how fast the halflings can walk. Oh, they some lazy motherfuckers, but we can make it work, interjected Goggins. We must be wary of the enemy. He has spies everywhere and worse, upon the open road. What spies? Asked Goggins. Strider gestured with a nod over to the bar. That southerner over there is a spy. I fear he may inform the Black Riders of the Hobbits' presence here, if we raise suspicion. And sure enough, as Goggins turned to look at the man, he appeared to be stealing furtive glances over towards Frodo and the other hobbits now sitting at a small table. "I'll kill that motherfucker," scowled Goggins, starting to rise from his chair, but Strider put a hand on his arm. "It is best to avoid attracting any more attention on ourselves, or the halflings, if it can be avoided." "Yes, Chief. Understood, sir. We should rest now and prepare to begin our journey before first light tomorrow to avoid our departure being noticed." Goggins nodded. As they spoke, there was suddenly a loud commotion behind them. "They're drawing far too much attention to themselves," said an uneasy Strider, looking over at the hobbits. "Stupid motherfuckers." Strider stood swiftly. "We must intervene before things get out of hand." "I got it," said Goggins, also standing, but at that moment, there was a mighty gasp in the room. Mr. Frodo had vanished. "Go," hissed an alarmed Strider. But as Goggins moved towards the center of the commotion in the room, he noticed out of the corner of his eye the squint-eyed Southerner spy moving excitedly towards the exit. He gestured with a nod to Strider to mind the hobbits while he dealt with the compromising spy. "Come here, motherfucker," Goggins roared seconds later as he chased down the terrified spy like a cop after a black perp. He returned to the inn a short time later, finding it still in a frenzied state with the hobbits and Strider nowhere to be seen. He looked over at Butterbur, who was busy calming his disgruntled guests. Seeing Goggins, he pointed a finger upstairs. Goggins got the message. A minute later, he entered the room with Strider and the hobbits, who looked absolutely terrified of the hooded Strider. "The Southerner?" asked Strider. "Dead. Stomped his ass out," replied Goggins casually. "Help us, Mr. Goggins, sir," cried a frightened Frodo, shielding behind him an equally terrified Sam, Pippin, and Merry. "Chill the fuck out, Frodo. He's on our side. This is the real Strider." "You are a friend of Gandalf?" asked Frodo. "But if he's Strider, then who are you?" he asked, looking at Goggins in confusion. "I thought you were Strider." "I'm just the guy he asked to help you, and I delivered the letter he left here with Butterbur. We're both on your side, little man. Both sent by Gandalf to help you." "How do I know you?" began Frodo, but Goggins cut him off angrily. "What happened downstairs? You fuckers really know how to draw attention to yourselves. I accidentally put my finger in the ring. In front of all those people. You got serious problems there, little man. No wonder so many people trying to kill you. You a nasty motherfucker." "I agree. It was not a wise move, Frodo." "Gandalf told you to keep it hidden. Keep it safe," interjected Strider. "I'm sorry, Mr. Strider. My finger slipped in as I fell. It won't happen again, I promise." "You're damn right. I'ma leave your ass here if you do that shit again," barked Goggins in revulsion. "The ring has a mind of its own," nodded Strider, a look of sympathetic understanding on his now unhooded face. "Always it is trying to return to the hand of its master." "I'm missing something here," thought Goggins, thoroughly confused. Something wasn't adding up. "Which ring you talking about, dude?" he asked. "Back in your house, you told me how you was gay as hell, letting every dude, including your uncle, smash. But now you saying that ass ain't even yours. Some other guy owns that shit." Nervously, Frodo put a hand into his coat pocket and pulled out a shiny gold ring. "Oh, that's what you've been talking about," exclaimed Goggins in absolute relief, realizing his misunderstanding. "I thought all you motherfuckers were homosexual." "What is that, my good Goggins, sir?" asked Frodo innocently. "It's when a man makes love to another man." "Abomination," spat Sam in disgust. "Such a thing is unheard of in the Shire," cried Frodo, on the verge of tears from the disturbing information. "It is a work of evil contrived by the enemy. Corrupting man to such extent, he rapidly mates with other men," said Strider, unmistakable fear in his voice. "If the Dark Lord has his way, I expect this abomination will spread to all corners, unchecked, penetrating every living man. Glad we cleared that one up, said Goggins innocently after a couple minutes of awkward silence as the group imagined the horrors. Mr. Strider, I will choose to trust you based on the advice of Mr. Goggins and accept your offer to accompany us on our journey to Rivendell, said Frodo, giving Strider a small smile. What would you advise me to do? Should we wait here for Gandalf or go? I would counsel we leave before first light tomorrow to avoid our departure being known of till we are far away. It's a 2-week journey at best, and we will be lucky if we can reach the other side unscathed. You can rest here in my room to avoid unfriendly eyes keeping watch on the rooms reserved for hobbits on the ground floor. Thank you, Strider, said Frodo. After what felt like only minutes since they had laid down and closed their eyes, they were being violently shaken awake by Goggins. Even Strider woke with a start, drawing his blade and jabbing the air in fright. He had fallen asleep on an uncomfortable-looking wooden chair by the window. It's 4 a.m., bitches. Time to go. He roared like a drill sergeant. After some hushed grumbling, they all got ready. The sky was still dark as they hastily consumed a quick breakfast of bread, cheese, and some dried fruits. The innkeeper, Butterbur, had kindly arranged ponies for their journey, ensuring they were well provisioned for the road ahead. Stay hard, bellowed Goggins, rallying the weary hobbits as they mounted their ponies. Strider led the way, his keen eyes scanning the horizon, ever alert for any sign of danger. The hobbits followed closely, with Goggins bringing up the rear on foot, opting against a horse, his imposing presence keeping the hobbits moving forward. We'll leave the road as soon as we're out of sight of Bree, said Strider from the front. It's too dangerous and is likely being watched. As dawn broke over Bree, the group left the main road for the more secretive path that Strider knew well. This route, although longer and more treacherous, would keep them hidden from the prying eyes of enemy spies and the Black Riders. Come on, bitches, shouted Goggins at regular intervals from the rear, ensuring the hobbits remained alert and did not slow down. I'm not sure I like this, Mr. Goggins, whispered Sam to a Frodo, swaying on his pony due to tiredness. Unfortunately for Sam, the whisper carried to Goggins' ears, who promptly pulled Sam down violently from his pony and began beating him. Do not intervene, said Strider, holding up a hand to stop the others getting off their ponies to help Sam. His methods may be strange to you, but it is the way of the Rangers, he said in a reassuring voice. Poor discipline within the ranks must be dealt with swiftly, or we will all fall to ruin and the abomination will spread. You just a motherfucking hater, barked Goggins, walking away from the downed hobbit who winced as he pulled himself back onto his pony, looking a bloody mess. After witnessing the heavy beating Goggins had administered to Sam, there was no further grumbling amongst the hobbits, and they maintained a good pace. Days passed in a blur of travel and training, with Goggins pushing the hobbits to their limits during breaks. We don't stop when we tired. We stop when we done, he would shout, his relentless drive terrifying. Despite their initial reluctance, the hobbits found themselves growing stronger, their spirits lifted by Goggins' relentless energy and Strider's quiet assurance. Even Strider began to weary at the uncompromising pace Goggins was forcing, even though he rode upon a steed and Goggins remained on foot. This is no mere mortal. He must be one of the Mire, reborn in Middle-earth. He thought in reverence at Goggins' inhuman capabilities and wondered how capable he'd be in battle. As the days turned into nights, their journey was marked by long silences and quiet conversations. Goggins shared stories of his past, his relentless pursuit of endurance, his tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and battles with his own demons. The hobbits, in turn, spoke of the Shire, their simple lives, and their longing to return to the safety of their homes. Strider, ever vigilant, led them through hidden valleys and along forgotten trails, his knowledge of the land invaluable but outdated and corrected regularly by Goggins' own ranger knowledge. He taught them how to move silently, to blend into their surroundings, and to stay alert for any sign of danger. Shut the fuck up. You hear that? That's a bitch-ass rabbit. Merry, he said, pointing a finger at the frightened hobbit. Go kill that motherfucker. He handed Merry a standard-issue carbon steel U.S. Navy SEAL combat knife and gave him a sharp nudge forward. Merry returned a short while later, proudly holding up his kill for all to see and looking very pleased with himself. "Confirmed kill," shouted Goggins. "Excellent work, soldier. Sam, get this cooked." Sam looked annoyed but followed the order without hesitation. That evening, as they gathered around a small fire, enjoying the now-cooked rabbit, Frodo spoke up. "Strider, do you really think we'll make it to Rivendell?" Strider looked at him, his expression serious but kind. "We will, Frodo. But the road is still long and fraught with danger. We must remain vigilant." "And what if we encounter the Black Riders?" Pippin asked, his voice trembling. "Then I got this Glock with me," interjected Goggins, pulling a strange mechanical-looking contraption from a concealed holster. "A couple slugs should put one of those fools to sleep." "Mighty is the weaponry of the mire," said Strider in admiration. "I stashed some more gear on Weathertop when I met Gandalf. An assault rifle, couple grenades, some body armor, and a shit ton of bullets." As the stars shone overhead, they drifted off to sleep, the weight of their mission heavy on their minds. Knowledge of the inevitable abomination, should they fail, strengthened their determination. Morning came swiftly, the first light of dawn breaking over the hills. They quickly packed up camp and set off once more. Eventually, the landscape began to change. The terrain grew rockier, and the air turned cooler as they reached closer to Weathertop. Strider guided them with unerring precision, his knowledge of the land evident as they navigated the increasingly treacherous path. By the time they reached Weathertop, the sun was beginning to set. Strider led them to a sheltered spot on the hillside, a natural fortification offering some protection from the elements and any prying eyes. "We have reached Weathertop far sooner than I expected. We'll rest here for the night," Strider announced, looking pleased but wary as he dismounted and helped the hobbits with their packs. "I need to look for any signs or messages Gandalf may have left. I will be back soon. Light no fire and stay close." "I'll be back soon too. I gotta go get my shit," said Goggins, also leaving. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape of Weathertop. The hobbits huddled together, their nerves on edge in the gathering darkness. Strider and Goggins had both departed, leaving the hobbits alone and vulnerable. Despite Strider's assurance, a deep sense of unease settled over them. "Do you think they'll be back soon?" asked Pippin anxiously. "I hope so," replied Sam, trying to sound braver than he felt. Although not particularly fond of Mr. Goggins, due primarily to the hefty beating he'd taken at his hands. He would still have felt safer in that place with him there. "We just need to stay together and stay quiet." As the night grew darker, a chill wind swept over Weathertop. The hobbits strained their ears, hoping to catch any sound of their returning companions. Instead, an eerie silence settled over the hill, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a distant sound reached their ears. A faint, otherworldly wail that sent shivers down their spines. The hobbits instinctively drew closer together, their eyes darting around in fear. "Do you hear that?" whispered Pippin, his voice barely audible. "It's those Black Riders," shrieked Merry. Before they could react, dark, menacing shapes emerged from the shadows, gliding silently towards them. The hobbits froze in terror as the ring wraiths closed in, their presence suffocating. Frodo clutched the ring in his pocket, feeling its weight like never before. "Stay back," he shouted, though his voice trembled. The ring wraiths paid no heed to his warning. One of them stepped forward, drawing a long, wicked blade. The air around him seemed to grow colder, the shadows deeper. "Give us the ring," hissed the foremost wraith, his voice chilling and venomous. Just as the ring wraith raised his blade to strike, a deafening roar echoed across Weathertop. "Stay hard, motherfuckers." Goggins burst onto the scene, a whirlwind of deadly precision. He was clad in full military gear, an assault rifle slung across his chest, grenades hanging from his belt, wearing body armor and a helmet. Without hesitation, he charged at the foremost ring wraith, tackling him to the ground and plunging a knife repeatedly into the wraith's ethereal form. The wraith let out an unearthly scream, writhing under Goggins' relentless assault. The other ring wraiths turned their attention to this unexpected threat, but Goggins was already on his feet, his rifle blazing. Bullets tore through the night, striking the ring wraiths and sending them reeling. "Eat, lead motherfuckers," roared Goggins. One by one, the ring wraiths began falling back, the sheer ferocity of Goggins' attack overwhelming them. But Goggins did not relent. He lobbed a grenade into their midst, the explosion lighting up the night and scattering the ring wraiths. They fled into the shadows, their shrieks of fear and pain echoing across Weathertop. In the midst of the chaos, Frodo found himself cornered by the clearly injured wraith Goggins had mauled. It raised its blade, ready to strike. Time seemed to slow as the blade descended, but before it could reach Frodo, Goggins leapt in front of him, taking the knife in his shoulder, but managing to save the little hobbit. "I'm hit," shouted Goggins, roaring in pain and fury. He grabbed the ringwraith by the throat, forcing it to drop its knife. "Not today, motherfucker," he growled, driving his knife into the wraith's abdomen. The ringwraith screeched and disintegrated into the night like a little bitch, leaving behind only its tattered robes. Goggins, breathing heavily and clutching his wounded shoulder, turned to Frodo and the other hobbits. "You okay, little man?" Frodo, shaken but unharmed, nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Goggins. You saved my life. You saved all our lives. It ain't nothing, brother." At that moment, Strider returned, his sword drawn and his eyes wide with concern. "What happened here?" "Where was you, motherfucker?" asked Goggins. "I was scouting up ahead when I heard fighting. I came as fast as I could," replied Strider, looking slightly embarrassed. "These little bitches tried to kill the hobbits, but they weren't shit." "You're hurt," said Strider, seeing Goggins' bloody shoulder. "That ain't nothing. I ain't no bitch." Strider stooped down and picked up the wraith's blade. "This is beyond my skill to heal. We must get you to Rivendell swiftly before you pass into the Shadow Realm. You've been stabbed by a Morgul blade, my friend. Dark magic is infused in the blades of the enemy." He straightened up and surveyed the scene. "You killed a Nazgul?" he gasped, sounding shaken. "Damn straight. Took that motherfucker's soul. But your own blade survived," continued Strider in awe, looking down at the slightly smoking blade still in Goggins' hand. "Standard issue carbon steel. This baby would cut through 100 of those bitch-ass niggers with ease. You did well, Mr. Goggins. You are the only man to have killed a Nazgul. I appreciate that, Chief, but we need to move out before those fuckers regroup." Goggins, still limping from his injury, stubbornly refused the steed offered by Strider. Determined to push through the pain, he marched alongside the hobbits, his gruff demeanor masking the toll the injury was taking on him. As the day wore on, the group traveled through dense forests and across rocky terrains, avoiding well-trodden paths to evade their pursuers. The impact of Goggins' wound grew more pronounced with each passing hour, and by nightfall, it was clear that even he needed attention. "We'll stop here for the night," announced Strider, selecting a small, secluded spot in a forest clearing. The area was surrounded by thick cover, offering some measure of concealment. "Merry Pippin, gather wood for a fire. We need to tend to Mr. Goggins' wound." "Sit down, Mr. Goggins," said Strider, gesturing to a flat rock near the fire. "Let me take a look at that shoulder." As Strider tended to his wound, Goggins began to fade in and out of consciousness. "You must resist the pull of the Nazgul's poison," urged Strider. "It feels like that hooker back on duty who tried to suck out my soul in Afghanistan. You have experienced this before?" asked Strider, taken aback. "Don't tell me you've never had a bad bitch try take your soul." "I have not faced that trial. Nor do I believe I am ready for it. I think I shit myself," said Goggins, feeling a warmth below and wincing in pain as he turned to check. I cannot heal you here. I have found you some athelas to slow the poison of the enemy, but only Elrond can save you now. He is the greatest of healers. We're still 4 days from Rivendell. We must hurry if we are to save you from passing from your wound." He cleaned the wound with water, then applied crushed herbs he carried in a small leather pouch. "This will help with the pain and keep the infection at bay." "That shit smells hella good," said Goggins, smelling the wholesome aroma of the athelas. Goggins watched in silence as Strider worked, his jaw clenched against the discomfort. The hobbits, having finished their task, gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by its soft glow. "Is Mr. Goggins going to be all right?" asked Frodo in concern. "He'll be fine," assured Strider, wrapping a clean bandage around the wound. "But we must get him to Rivendell quickly." As the company pressed onward towards Rivendell, Goggins' wound continued to take its toll. He fought through the pain with his usual grit and determination, refusing to let it slow him down. Strider led the way, ever vigilant, while the hobbits struggled to keep pace. By the time they reached the borders of Rivendell, the hobbits were exhausted and Goggins was delirious. The familiar sense of dread loomed over them as they neared the ford of Bruinen. Just as they were about to cross the ford, the eerie screeches of the Black Riders echoed through the air. The Ringwraith, relentless in their pursuit, had caught up to them. Strider drew his sword. "They're here," shouted Strider, his voice tense. "Stay close, and whatever happens, keep moving towards Rivendell." The hobbits huddled together in fear, their eyes darting to Goggins for help. Despite his injury, Goggins readied his assault rifle. "Stay hard, little bitches," he growled. "We ain't done yet." The Ringwraiths appeared from the shadows, their dark forms riding menacingly on their black horses. Their presence seemed to drain the warmth from the surroundings, casting fear over the group. Goggins moved forward on his steed, his rifle at the ready. "Spooky-ass bitches, come get some," he yelled, opening fire. The burst of gunfire shattered the night, bullets ripping through the air and striking the horses. The steeds screamed in pain, collapsing under the assault. The Wraith were thrown from their mounts, their ghostly forms writhing on the ground. Though the bullets did not kill the Ringwraiths, they caused them immense pain, their ethereal bodies convulsing with each hit. Goggins continued to fire, sheer will and focus clear upon his face as he emptied his magazine into the dark figures. "Run across the ford," shouted Strider, pushing the hobbits forward. "Now!" As Goggins finished firing his last rounds at the approaching Black Riders, he saw a powerful wave rising from the Bruinen River, forming a mighty flood which came crashing down upon the Ringwraiths. As the adrenaline ebbed away, his vision blurred. Goggins' grip on his assault rifle slackened, and he slumped forward, slipping from his horse. He fell to the ground, unconscious, his body finally succumbing to the cumulative toll of his injuries and exertion. There and back again. A Goggins Tale. Part 3, in the Valley of Rivendell. Goggins awoke in a soft bed to the warm glow of sunlight filtering through the ornate windows of the room. The air was fresh, and the soothing sound of distant waterfalls filled his ears. He blinked, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. As his vision cleared, he saw Gandalf sitting beside his bed, a look of relief upon his face. "Good morning, David," Gandalf greeted him warmly, his eyes twinkling. "It's good to see you awake finally." Goggins tried to sit up, wincing slightly as a dull ache brought back memories of his recent mission. "What the fuck? Where am I?" he asked, his voice raspy. "You are in Rivendell, in the House of Elrond," Gandalf replied calmly. "You've been through quite an ordeal, my friend. But rest assured, you are safe now." Goggins looked around, taking in his surroundings. The room was beautifully adorned, with intricate tapestries and elegant furniture. It was a stark contrast to the harsh environments he was accustomed to. Gandalf leaned forward, his expression growing serious. "I must thank you, David. You saved the hobbits and took a Morgul blade meant for Frodo. Elrond himself tended to your wound. The poison of the Nazgul is not easily healed, but thanks to Elrond's skill and your remarkable resilience, you have been given a second chance. Who's that? He a doctor? Elrond is Lord of Rivendell and the greatest healer in Middle-earth. It is no small feat to recover from such a wound, and without his help, you would soon have passed into the Shadow Realm. Goggins flexed his shoulder, surprised at the lack of pain. My stabbing arm feels good as new, he remarked, admiration for Elrond's healing abilities evident in his tone. We could have used a guy like that in Afghanistan and Iraq, said Goggins, recalling his injured brothers on duty with him on his tours. Man, I got some knee problems he can help with too. Later, responded Gandalf. First, we must ready you for the great feast that is to be held in your honor. In my honor? Asked Goggins, taken aback. Yes, David. Your deeds already set you amongst the greats. While you were resting, I probed you deeply. You motherfucker. What do you mean you probed me? Cut in Goggins, eyes wide in disgust. Your mind, David. I looked at your memories, corrected Gandalf. Bro, that's fucked up. You can't invade another man's privacy like that. That's some NSA shit right there. Fear not, for I took great care to avoid any personal memories, but you'll pardon my mentioning your beating a farmer maggot was entirely unnecessary, replied Gandalf disapprovingly. Nonetheless, your actions in saving the hobbits, running 120 miles on foot without break between Bree and the Shire, are triumphs which shall be recorded in the books of lore, as will your great victory over the Witch King with nothing but a knife. You fought 9 ring wraiths and managed to kill one. I shudder to think what would have happened had you not been there. The hobbits would likely have been killed and the ring lost to the enemy. No, my good David, it is likely you saved the world. Those little motherfuckers were screaming louder than the ring wraiths, like little bitches when on Weathertop, and that homeless guy Strider conveniently disappeared when the fighting started. They are absurd little creatures, chuckled Gandalf with a warm smile. And that homeless guy is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the rightful heir to the throne of Gondor. No shit, but what is this ring everyone wants? Asked Goggins. The ring was created by the Dark Lord Sauron, and it contains much of his power. It grants the wearer incredible powers, but it will corrupt the bearer to darkness given enough time. It is dangerous. Very dangerous. What powers? Asked Goggins, intrigued. Powers are granted according to the wearer. The more powerful and capable the wearer, the more power he would wield through the ring. A being such as yourself would be capable of wielding much more of its power than a little halfling. It would enhance the capability you already possess and more. You mean like steroids? Before Gandalf could answer, a loud bell rang out. It is time for the great feast. Let's go, said Gandalf. Goggins lifted his soft bed covers and looked down. He was entirely naked. What the fuck? He growled. Gandalf again chuckled. So impressed were the elf maidens by your proportions, they decided not to dress you. One indeed of their number has expressed interest in marriage, if you are willing, but I digress. Don't tell me they ain't ever seen a big black. Gandalf cut him off, pointing to intricately stitched elven robes hung by the window. They look gay as hell, scowled Goggins in disgust. You have been gifted elven robes of high honor. Your own garments wear torn and soiled. They will be purified and repaired. Interestingly, the elves took particular interest in your armor and are studying its properties to improve their own. Thus far, your armor has proven sturdier and more resilient than mithril. That's proprietary technology, shouted an outraged Goggins. Y'all are a bunch of intrusive motherfuckers. As for your weapon, continued Gandalf, ignoring Goggins' indignation, your metal bow is of cunning design. You mean my Glock and assault rifle? Indeed, an elf has already been killed during their study. Don't forget gun safety, responded Goggins, shaking his head at the incompetence of the elves. Indeed, after that mishap, Lord Elrond ordered a cessation of all further study. They have asked that you demonstrate your weapons so they may learn and replicate. 1,000 elves, thus armed, could perhaps even storm Mordor. Elves with guns, laughed Goggins. Sure, but they gonna need training to use those weapons. I'ma put those motherfuckers through Hell Week. I agree, but we can discuss the details later. It's time for the feast. A short time later, Goggins, in his elaborate elven robes, followed Gandalf into an enormous pavilion, at the center of which sat an enormous long table stacked high with vegan food. At the table were already seated many elves, a couple dwarves, men, and the hobbits, who waved and smiled at him. Mr. Goggins, called an important-looking elf, sitting at the head of the table. Please, your place is here. It is the place of honor, he said, gesturing to the seat at his right hand. Gandalf sat next to Goggins on his left and introduced them. This is Elrond, Lord of Rivendell. Pleased to meet you, brother, said Goggins, politely holding out his hand. There was a short moment of confusion, after which Elrond realized this was a form of greeting and clasped hands awkwardly with Goggins. Man, your hands are soft as hell. I ain't never met a woman with softer hands. Thank you, Mr. Goggins, smiled Elrond, interpreting his words as a compliment. As the feast continued, Goggins found himself deep in conversation with Gandalf and Elrond. The grandeur of Rivendell, combined with the lively chatter of the other guests, created a surreal backdrop for their discussion. Tell me, Mr. Goggins, Elrond began, his keen eyes studying Goggins with interest. How did you manage to kill a wraith with nothing but your knife? Such a feat is unheard of. Goggins leaned back to think, noticing as he did all eyes at the table focused intently upon him. My Navy SEAL training. Those spooky bitches didn't know what hit them. I've been through 3 Hell Weeks, broken every bone in my legs and still continued the fight. And when I seen those fuckers, I thought, fuck, yeah, I'm ready. So I tackled that motherfucker to the ground and went to work. He screamed like a little bitch. Elrond nodded thoughtfully. Your methods are impressive. Your resilience and skills are unlike anything we've seen. I would like you to demonstrate your weapons for us, so that we may learn and perhaps replicate them for our own defenses. Goggins raised an eyebrow. Sure, I can do that. But I need you to make me more special arrows. I'm running low. Elrond smiled. It will be done. Under your direction, our craftsmen will work on creating more for you. At that moment, a stout elderly dwarf with a long braided beard took the seat Gandalf had vacated next to Goggins. It was Gloin, a dwarf of great renown. Well met, Mr. Goggins. Gloin greeted with enthusiasm. I've heard tales of your armor, said to be stronger than Mithril. What is it made of? Goggins looked at the dwarf, recognizing the eagerness in his eyes. Class 4 armor plates and Kevlar. The plates can stop any arrows, swords, and even your battle axes. Gloin's eyes widened in excitement. Remarkable. Such protection could be invaluable to my kin. Would you be willing to come to our kingdom of Erebor as a friend and guest of the dwarves and share with us the secrets of this armor? We could forge a new line of defenses for our warriors. Perhaps it will allow us to retake our lost kingdom of Moria. Goggins nodded and fist bumped the old dwarf. For sure, little homie, I got you. Gloin laughed heartily. The dwarves will be forever grateful for your knowledge, friend Goggins. I offer you the service of my son Gimli as small payment. Goggins looked across the table where Gloin was gesturing to a younger, strong-looking dwarf who gave a small nod. As the feast came to a close, Goggins, Gandalf, Strider, and Elrond were summoned outside to attend to a pressing matter. They found themselves facing a captured enemy spy, held down on the ground by elven guards. Despite Gandalf's best efforts to extract information, the spy remained defiant. Strider stepped forward, looking grim as he tried to intimidate the spy into breaking his silence. When that failed to produce fruit, Strider began brutally kicking the spy hard, forcing him to curl into a defense position. "That's it, bro. Harder, right in the fucking balls," shouted Goggins, encouraging Strider. But the spy remained resolute, refusing to divulge any information or make a sound beyond groans of pain. Frustrated at the stubborn spy's silence after Gandalf's intimidation and Strider's rough handling, Elrond ordered the spy be taken to the cells. "Wait, I got this," interrupted Goggins, stepping forward, offering to take a shot at interrogating the spy. His request for a bucket of water and a linen cloth raised eyebrows among the others present, but they obliged nonetheless. "We call this waterboarding," Goggins told the smirking spy. Within minutes of his enhanced interrogation, the spy broke, spilling the secrets of Saruman's treachery. He revealed the Dark Wizard's plan to unleash an enormous army upon Rohan, with the king already under his spell. The revelation left those present in shock and dismay. "Of Saruman's treachery, Elrond and I were already aware," said Gandalf gravely, "but the news of another army is most worrisome." "Indeed," responded Elrond, "this will have to be explored in greater detail at the Great Council tomorrow. In the meantime, I thank you again, Mr. Goggins. You have proven yourself once again most capable, and I would have you present at tomorrow's council. Your help will be crucial in the war to come." As the others left and the spy was led away to a cell, Strider approached. "Good job, brother," he greeted the ranger encouragingly. Strider placed a hand upon Goggins' shoulder and inclined his head in sign of respect. "It is I who is in awe at your skill, brother. It is now clear to me which of us is the greater ranger. If I come into my own, then I would make you Prince of Ithilien, a commander of the armies of Gondor and a lord of men." "Shit, Lord Goggins, that's got a nice ring to it," he thought before recalling his earlier conversation with Gandalf, where the old wizard had mentioned Strider was not his name, and nor was he merely a ranger. "Strider, that your code name?" asked Goggins, appreciating the sentiment. "Some in Bree call me Strider, but my true name is Aragorn." "Well, Aragorn, brother, stay hard when you in power. Your words carry great meaning." Early the following morning, as the sun bathed the valley of Rivendell in its golden warmth, the Council of Elrond gathered, tension heavy in the air. Seated between Frodo and Gandalf, Goggins observed the assembly with suspicion, his gaze flickering from one face to another as the proceedings began. Gandalf rose to address the council and spoke of Isengard's betrayal and its imminent threat. Goggins listened intently, wondering if a covert strike might be a feasible option to neutralize the treacherous wizard. Next, Gloin, representing the dwarves, recounted the hardships faced by his people and their desperate struggle to reclaim their lost kingdom. The cloaked messenger from Mordor and his offer of reward in exchange for information on Bilbo and the recovery of the ring. Legolas, the elf, followed next, his expression grave as he revealed the escape of Gollum, a development that cast a shadow of uncertainty over their plans. Then, it was Elrond's turn to speak. Rising from his seat, the Lord of Rivendell turned his piercing gaze upon Goggins, introducing him to the assembly. "And now," Elrond began, his voice carrying the weight of ages of wisdom, "allow me to introduce a newcomer to our midst, one who has already proven himself a stalwart ally in our struggle against the darkness." All eyes turned to Goggins, who met their scrutiny with a steely gaze. But before Elrond could continue, Boromir rose to his feet, his expression clouded with suspicion as he fixed his gaze upon Goggins. "I must object, my lord," Elrond Boromir declared defiantly. "He is one of the Haradrim. I have seen his dark kind before, striking down the valiant men of Gondor." "Motherfucker!" shot back Goggins, rising from his seat. But Gandalf raised a hand, silencing all in the gathering. "Fool! He has been sent by the Valar to aid us. Without his aid, the ring may already have been lost." "You do not know your peril," Aragorn told Boromir, thinking of the spy Goggins had effortlessly broken last night and fearing similar fate for the ignorant Boromir if he were not careful. Goggins bristled at the accusation. His jaw clenched, but he chose to remain silent. Elrond raised his hand, silencing the murmurs that had erupted from Boromir's accusation. "Listen, all of you, to the deeds of this man," Elrond began firmly. "David Goggins, as you know him, stands among us not as an enemy, but as a savior. He risked his life to save the halflings from the clutches of the enemy. He took the Morgul blade intended for Frodo, shielding him from harm. And he faced the Witch King of Angmar in combat with nothing but a small knife and emerged victorious, striking a blow against the Dark Lord himself. With the death of the Witch King, Sauron has lost one of his greatest commanders, thanks to the bravery and skill of Mr. Goggins. You have yet to rival his feats, Boromir." As Elrond spoke, those within the gathering looked upon Goggins with growing respect and admiration. "And let us not forget," Elrond continued, "the armor and weapons of Goggins, forged in some mighty unknown place. His armor, comprised of Class 4 plates and Kevlar, is sturdier than mithril and capable of withstanding the deadliest of blows. His weapons, the metal bow, are of cunning design, capable of striking down foes from a distance with deadly accuracy. There is much we can gain from our honored guest." The council members listened attentively, some nodding hungrily at the description of Goggins' formidable arsenal. But now, Elrond's tone grew once again grim. "We face a greater peril than ever before. The ring, forged by the Dark Lord in the fires of Mount Doom, has resurfaced, and with it, the shadow of Mordor looms over Middle-earth once more. Sauron seeks to reclaim his lost prize and unleash untold darkness and suffering upon our world." He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "Our only hope lies in destroying the ring. No longer can we keep the thing hidden or sail west, leaving behind the troubles of Middle-earth, for surely the darkness would spread to every corner." "But the ring cannot be destroyed by any means which we have here," said one of the elf lords. "No, it must be taken deep into Mordor and cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. One of you must do this." Elrond's words hung heavy in the air as the council exchanged glances. "One does not simply walk into Mordor. Its black gates are guarded by more than just orcs. There is evil there that does not sleep. The Great Eye is ever watchful. It is a barren wasteland, riddled with fire, ash, and dust. The very air you breathe is a poisonous fume. Not with 10,000 men could you do this. It is folly," declared Boromir. At this, the elf Legolas arose emphatically. "Have you heard nothing Lord Elrond has said? The ring must be destroyed," he announced loudly to the gathering. To this Gimli, the dwarf stood in outrage, challenging the elf, "And I suppose you think you're the one to do it." But Goggins raised a hand at the angry dwarf. "Sit your punk ass down, Gimli." "Yes, my lord," said the dwarf, nodding apologetically as he resumed his seat. This intervention was sufficient to quell a full-scale argument from breaking out. Discussion remained fierce between the elves Boromir and Gandalf. Goggins heard a small voice next to him. He turned to see Frodo, bravely accepting the quest. "Speak up, little man. Say that shit with your chest," he encouraged. "I will take it," shouted Frodo, finally being heard over the angry voices. "I will take the ring to Mordor, though I do not know the way." There was a collective intake of breath, followed by a pause, and then one by one Gandalf, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas pledged to go with Frodo, along with Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Frodo then turned to Goggins. "Please, Mr. Goggins, sir, it would comfort me greatly if you came with us." Goggins nodded, accepting the invitation. "Sure, I'll carry your bitch ass to Mordor." Although none said it aloud, all within the company felt a great relief that Goggins was coming with them. At this, Elrond stood, addressing the company. 10 companions. So be it, you shall be the Fellowship of the Ring. There and back again. A Goggins Tale, Part 4. Rivendell to Lothlorien. And so, with the members of the Fellowship appointed, preparations were underway. True to his word, Goggins assisted both the elves and dwarves with demonstrations and the technical details regarding his weaponry. The elves were captivated by the accuracy, efficiency, and range of his bows, or, as he referred to them, his firearms. And the dwarves, well, as expected, they were positively aroused at the effectiveness of his armor. His body armor was lighter than a mithril shirt, but more effective than mithril chainmail reinforced by a chestplate in protecting the wearer. The elves also took a keen interest in his military uniform, particularly his camouflage clothing. More cunningly woven and more potent in its concealment than the cloaks of Lothlorien, remarked one elf. An army clad in such garb could pass unnoticed even by elven eyes. Thus, they began immediately replicating the camouflage colors across their own armor and clothing. Gandalf had explained that due to Goggins' intervention and his swift aid in expediting the hobbits from the Shire, they had arrived in Rivendell much earlier than anticipated. Indeed, said Gandalf, were it not for your help, David, it may have taken several more months for the ring to arrive here, by which time it may well have already been too late. And because of your defeat of the Witch King, it is likely that the remaining ring wraiths have retreated, gathering back in Mordor. It'll be months before they would dare resume their pursuit, if they even dared at all, now that fear of death has returned to them. The Fellowship's departure was set for the 1st of August, far earlier than Gandalf had originally expected. Of the company, only Goggins seemed upbeat about finally starting the mission. He had spent the last 6 weeks training a unit of elves in covert warfare, accompanying Aragorn on several stealth missions that turned into raiding parties attacking strategic targets and enemy supply trains. Goggins took this opportunity to reveal his last surprise, hidden in his duffel bag, his Barrett 50 caliber rifle. With it, he took out a couple of trolls and an important-looking Uruk from a distance of over a mile away. The elves once again marveled at the capabilities of Goggins' weaponry. Unfortunately, an elf who inadvertently sat too close to the barrel lost his hearing due to the loud gunshot. He wept with great sadness, knowing he would never again hear the singing and soft music of the elven harps. Using his dark complexion, which Gandalf humorously described as overly ripe, Goggins smeared dirt on his face and donned orc clothes taken from a fallen enemy. Disguised as an uncommonly large Uruk, he infiltrated Isengard, assassinating several captains and sabotaging several weapon forges. That night, the victory feast and merrymaking in Rivendell was particularly extravagant. The offer of marriage to an elf maiden was once again proposed to Goggins, but once again declined on the grounds that he preferred the bad bitches. Goggins pondered the advantages he could bring to both sides in the coming wars. Recognizing the time it would take to replicate modern weaponry and the imminent threat of attack, he needed to find some quick wins. He advised Elrond that it was strategically foolish for the elves to remain at Rivendell, considering its distance from Isengard. Goggins urged Elrond, the Elven Lords, and Gandalf to adopt a more strategic approach and temporarily abandon Rivendell. The elves could reinforce the strongholds most vulnerable to attack, providing cover that would distract the enemy from the Fellowship's movements. Anticipating the first strike on Rohan, Goggins proposed sending 1,000 skilled elves to reinforce the region. They might even seize an opportunity to strike Isengard before Saruman's forces reached full strength. Drawing from his study of historical battles and war strategy, Goggins discussed the Roman testudo formation and Greek phalanx as models applicable to their situation. He discussed these at length with Elrond, Gloin, Aragorn, Boromir, and the High Elves who were present. "These are bold formations," said Aragorn, observing the rough sketches Goggins had made to illustrate these concepts. "This is gonna be a badass army," encouraged Goggins. Additionally, as this was a united war for Middle-earth against common enemies, Goggins thought it was an inexcusable oversight that men, elves, and dwarves hadn't considered how best to fight effectively together, complementing each other's strengths while covering weaknesses. He then called upon the elves, dwarves, and men present to provide troops so he could assemble a special forces army. This heavy shock unit would consist of 500 men forming 2 central phalanxes, complemented by dwarves in support positions, capable of protective testudo formations, and 500 elven archers for long-range attacks. The units would be attired in armor based of his own design. Light, but incredibly durable. He spent the next weeks before the Fellowship was to depart, drilling his new regiment of 2,000 soldiers into fighting together as an effective unit. Training began at sunrise and continued well beyond sunset. The plan was agreed. This regiment would be sent to Rohan along with the elves of Rivendell, departing a month after the departure of the Fellowship on their quest, once armor and weaponry had been crafted. And finally, he instructed the dwarves on how to create mustard gas, which would be extremely effective in decimating large numbers of closely packed infantry. "Be careful with that shit," he warned. Not even the hobbits were spared from Goggins. To harden the halflings, Goggins demanded they too complete the training alongside his Special Forces regiment and survive the Hell Week. Their training needs to prepare them for the mission ahead. Goggins informed a concerned Gandalf. They need to be prepared for all terrains. We should also expect cold exposure, water immersion, high altitudes, and covering large distances at speed while avoiding detection. "How can Mordor be any worse than this?" complained Sam, his face covered in dirt. To his repeated misfortune, he was once again overheard by Goggins, who took the opportunity to reinstill discipline within his ranks by once again beating down the fat little hobbit, causing even the dwarves nearby to wince. "This ain't the place to be a motherfucking pussy," roared Goggins to the troops assembled. "That little fucker's earned you all another 500 push-ups. Get to it, motherfuckers." The sound of groans exploded around them. "Fucking halflings," Merry and Pippin heard one of the dwarves nearby grunt. "What about the hobbits' gear?" asked Aragorn later that evening. "They can't fight for shit, so they're gonna need to stay out of trouble and engage the enemy from a distance," Goggins replied. "Their body armor should be ready soon, and once it's here, they ain't taking it off. Those little bitches gotta get used to wearing that shit. I also got pistols made for them, 22 caliber. Should be useful in tight spots." Aragorn nodded, then turned to Goggins again. "And what about the elf Legolas? Is there anything you can do for him?" Goggins looked over at Legolas and extended his hand, motioning for Legolas to hand over his bow. He inspected it closely, then shook his head with a sigh. "I'll be honest with you, man. This is a piece of shit," Goggins said frankly. "How far does it shoot? Maybe 200 yards max? Yeah, we're gonna switch this out. Lucky for you, the dwarves just sent over a care package based on the specs I gave them. We call this a semi-automatic rifle, similar to an AR-15, firing 80 grain armor piercing rounds. These babies will reach up to 2,000 yards plus. The magazine can hold up to 40 bullets. It's got a silencer and variable range scope." He handed Legolas the new rifle, then turned his attention to their designated beast of burden, Bill. "I think Bill here's gonna need a refit too," Goggins remarked, looking thoughtfully at the pony. "We're gonna need plenty of ammo and equipment on this mission, so either we get a couple more ponies or we'll have to carry the rest of this shit ourselves." On the morning of departure, the air in Rivendell was heavy with the gloom. The Fellowship gathered at the courtyard, armored and equipped for the journey ahead. Goggins stood at the forefront, his presence commanding attention amidst the elves, dwarves, and men. He surveyed the group with a critical eye, ensuring everyone was prepared for what lay ahead. "All right, listen up, motherfuckers," Goggins began, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembled company. "Today, we embark on a serious fucking mission. Now this shit ain't gonna be easy. We're gonna face some fucked up shit out there. Taliban, ISIS, North Koreans." He paused, locking eyes with each member of the Fellowship in turn. "But none of that matters. We got a motherfucking job to do, and we're gonna do it. Ain't no room for bitch-ass niggers. Trust in your training, trust in each other. We got this." Goggins' words filled them with conviction, bolstering the resolve of those gathered. Gandalf nodded approvingly, recognizing the fire in Goggins' speech. With final preparations complete and farewells exchanged with Elrond and the elves of Rivendell, the Fellowship set out, heading south towards the lands of Holland, with Goggins at the head setting a ferocious pace. Days passed in vigilance and weariness as they navigated through forests and the mostly flat lands of Holland. Their new camouflage gear gave them excellent cover against flocks of birds spying out the land. After 5 days, they arrived at the Redhorn Pass at the foot of Caradhras, its looming peak shrouded in cloud and snow. It is our good fortune that we are still in summer. In the winter, Caradhras would likely have been nigh on impassable. That being said, it will still be a difficult journey, said Aragorn. Gandalf, his brow furrowed with apprehension, surveyed the mountain. Caradhras has always been a perilous crossing, he muttered, his voice barely audible over the rising winds. But we stand absent choice, lest we chance the road under the mountain and endure the long dark of Moria. We do not know what evil sleeps beneath the mountain, cautioned Aragorn. I would not go that way until all other roads are attempted. Gandalf paused in thought before responding. What does the ring-bearer say? But Goggins cut in. Man, fuck the ring-bearer, he roared. Y'all need to stop being such pussies. This shit's less than half the size of Everest. I'd conquer this hill in an afternoon. Then it is settled, said Aragorn swiftly before anyone could object. Boromir held up a hand, speaking openly for the first time since their departure from Rivendell. Each of us should carry a faggot of wood, as large as he can bear. I was born under the shadow of the White Mountains, and know something of journeys in the high places. Ain't no faggots up in this bitch, exploded Goggins. Gimli, get your punk ass here. Yes, my lord, said Gimli, hastening to Goggins' side. You a stout motherfucker. Go cut down those trees. Yes, my lord, responded Gimli, hastening to follow orders and fell the dead trees Goggins pointed to. Who's gonna carry the logs? Said Goggins a short while later, next to the pile Gimli had chopped. With that, the Fellowship began the arduous ascent, feet sinking into the deepening snow, muscles straining against the unforgiving slope. Goggins led the way, his experience in harsh conditions proving invaluable as he guided them through treacherous paths. Hours stretched into eternity as they fought their way upward, battling not just the mountain's fury, but their own exhaustion at trying to keep pace with Goggins. Yet, with each step, they drew closer to the crest, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that eventually the path would become a descent. Eventually, after hours of grueling climbing, the Fellowship reached a point where the path narrowed and the terrain became increasingly rugged. Large boulders and fallen rocks blocked their path, leaving them at an impasse. We can't go around, Legolas observed, scanning the sheer cliffs that flanked their route. We must find a way through or go back. Gandalf furrowed his brow, deep in thought. There is no way to clear the path, unfortunately, he said grimly, eyeing the heavy rocks obstructing their path. I fear we may have to go back. Man, fuck that, said Goggins, stepping forward. He reached down to his belt and pulled out a grenade, a weapon the likes of which the Fellowship had never seen. What in the name of Durin is that? Gimli exclaimed. With a swift motion, Goggins placed the grenade at the base of the obstruction and pulled the pin. Fire in the hole, he shouted, motioning for all to move back. The explosion reverberated through the mountain pass, sending debris flying and clearing a substantial portion of the blockage. What sorcery is this? Gandalf muttered, his eyes wide with fear and amazement. Never in my long years have I witnessed such power, but it seems we have our path. You ain't never seen Harry Potter? Asked Goggins, confused at how easily Gandalf was impressed. Harry Potter? Repeated Gandalf, brow furrowed in thought. I am not familiar with this sage. Now, that motherfucker got spells. He killed Voldemort with just a disarming spell. Powerful, he sounds. This Harry Potter, said Gandalf. Dudes, got skills, I'll give him that. He came back from death just to kill the Dark Lord. He returned from death to continue the fight? Noble is this great wizard, and superior is your world to our own in many ways, my good David. Nah, this ain't nothing, man. We got nukes and shit where I'm from that could turn Mordor into Hiroshima. And what of your leaders? Asked Gandalf. We got Biden trying to make America gay again, and Trump grabbing bitches by the pussy. Great meaning do I perceive within your words, brother, said Aragorn, who had been listening intently to their conversation as he helped the others kindle a fire. But you are wise beyond our comprehension. I got a Bachelor of Science in Nuclear Engineering from Berkeley in 1989. Then you are over 1,000 years old? Gasped Aragorn in wide-eyed reverence. It was the year 3018 of the Third Age in Middle-earth. He is not of this age, said Gandalf wisely, continuing to mistake Goggins for one of the Valar. That explains why your speech is so foreign to our ears, my Lord Goggins, said Aragorn. Gimli, called Goggins. Yes, my lord. Start a fire with those faggots. Yes, my lord. They all sat and rested by the fire, warming their hands and feet and enjoying the scenic view before them. They would take a short break to rest before beginning the final stage of their journey across the mountain, the descent. We made it, gasped Merry in relief as they touched down on the other side of the mountain, slumping to the ground with weariness. Good work, men, Goggins shouted as they finally reached the foot of the mountain. The Fellowship was exhausted, but in good spirits at finally leaving behind the harsh cold. We have conquered cruel Caradhras in a single day. We are truly flying. Let us now set course for the lands of Lothlorien, said Gandalf. There and back again. A Goggins Tale, Part 5, Lothlorien. The passing of the mountain had been a challenging endeavor, but finally, the Fellowship had arrived at the borders of Lothlorien. Goggins' training of the company, especially the halflings and their new equipment, had enabled them to make the crossing in a single day. Already, the halflings appeared a good deal hardier than they had since they'd left Hobbiton. Gone was their excess body weight and overhanging belly fat. Even the once fat hobbit Sam now boasted a six-pack and newly developed pectoral muscles, complemented by shoulders that appeared carved from living rock. Just wait till Rosie sees the new you, Sam teased Frodo, causing the others sat around them to laugh. They had stopped by the banks of the Silverlode for a short break to recover from their exertions on the mountain. Rosie Cotton, said Sam, smiling to himself as he gazed down at the flowing river beside them. Man, fuck these hoes, bellowed a disapproving Goggins unexpectedly. His fat ass just got into shape. Why you want a bitch like Rosie to fuck things up again? Now wait just a minute there, Mr. Goggins, sir, responded Sam defiantly. Evidently, Goggins had crossed a line by insulting his dear Rosie. Goggins looked down at his calloused hands and sighed at the inevitable action he must take to reinstate discipline within his unit. Evidently, your bitch ass ain't learned its lesson. This time, Sam attempted to fight back against the beating gifted to him by Goggins, twice his size and tenfold his match in strength. Oh, your punk ass is getting strong now, laughed Goggins, almost admiring the fat hobbit's progress as he set about him for a third time since Hobbiton. I'm still gonna slap the shit out of you, he taunted as he continued to deliver blows and gradually break down his defiance. Sam glanced over to the other hobbits for assistance, but they remained seated resolutely upon the ground, pretending not to notice Sam's plight. They ain't want this smoke, roared Goggins. Eventually, Boromir rose to intervene but was stopped by a raised hand from Aragorn. We must help the halfling, he urged. He but hardens the halfling for the road ahead, explained Aragorn. Can you not see? Already he has grown much under Lord Goggins' instruction. Beside him, Gandalf lowered his pipe and gave Boromir a stern look. Do not interfere in the ways of the mire, for your simple mind comprehends them not. Such was the look in Gandalf's eyes. Boromir was compelled back to the rock upon which he had been sitting. "This is for your own good, motherfucker!" shouted Goggins, bringing Sam's beating to a close, leaving the hobbit a twitching mess upon the grass. "You motherfuckers," he said, pointing at Frodo, Merry, and Pippin. "Set up camp. We gonna chill here tonight. Get a fire going. I'ma go take a shit." Hurriedly, the hobbits scrambled up and got to work. "Is it wise to set a fire?" asked Boromir. "We are in the open, within sight of a known orc stronghold. We got enough firepower to take out a small country." "They ain't gonna do shit," replied Goggins, before heading off into the woods to expel the contents of his bowel. As night descended, the fellowship huddled around the small fire, the flickering flames casting long shadows against the surrounding trees. The soothing sounds of the Silverlode and the distant chirping of nocturnal creatures provided a deceptive calm. Suddenly, Goggins' keen ears picked up a sound, a distant but unmistakable growl followed by the guttural murmurs of orc voices. "All right, you little motherfuckers," hissed Goggins to the hobbits. "You're up. It's time for you to get your first taste of blood. The rest of us ain't gonna interfere." Frodo, Sam, and Merry immediately sprang into action, their recent training kicking in. They moved swiftly and silently, taking up strategic vantage positions around the camp, ensuring they could cut off any escape routes when the fighting began. "Pippin, you're on support duty. Lob this stun grenade at the enemy. Then hit him with a flare, so the team can see what they're dealing with." Pippin nodded, eager to prove himself. He clutched the stun grenade tightly, waiting for Goggins' signal. The sounds grew louder, the orcs and wolves closing in, their dark shapes barely visible in the night. "Now, motherfucker!" Pippin lobbed the stun grenade toward the approaching enemy. A loud bang echoed through the valley, followed by disoriented growls and shouts from the orcs. He then quickly lit and tossed the flare, casting a bright, harsh light across the scene, illuminating the startled orcs and wolves. Frodo, Sam, and Merry fired from their positions, their bullets finding their marks with precision. The orcs, blinded and confused by the sudden light, were easy targets. The hobbits' relentless training paid off as they worked in unison, cutting down the enemy with surprising efficiency. Within minutes, the fighting was over. The orcs and wolves lay dead, scattered across the ground. Goggins and the remaining company watched, mightily impressed as the hobbits emerged from their positions, breathless but victorious. "This is why you do not interfere in the affairs of a mire," Gandalf snarled at Boromir, clear disdain upon his face. Boromir, still processing the swift and brutal efficiency of the hobbits, could only nod in agreement. "Would that we had these hobbits and their like for the defense of Gondor," he muttered. Goggins approached the hobbits, a rare smile of approval on his face. "Well done, little bitches. You've proven yourselves tonight. Remember this feeling. It's just the beginning. When this is all over, you four are gonna be some savage motherfuckers." The fellowship resumed their rest around the fire, the hobbits feeling a new sense of pride, while the others felt a newfound respect for their capabilities and fearlessness. Goggins' unorthodox methods had once again shown their worth, hardening the company for the challenges that lay ahead. The fire crackled softly as they exchanged stories. "Mr. Goggins, sir, I have a question," said Frodo. "Say that shit with your chest," Little Man encouraged Goggins. "Where do you come from?" "My people come from Africa. They came to America as slaves a long time ago. My dad was a pimp. He used to beat on me and my mama." "That explains a lot," whispered Sam, but his words unfortunately carried in the night to Goggins, who gave a small smirk. "Evidently, your motherfucking ass ain't learned its lesson, but I'ma let you off this one time cause of you and your boy's show on the battlefield today." "Thank you, Mr. Goggins," Sir responded Sam, bowing his head in respect and humility. Now, I'ma keep watch tonight, so y'all bitches can go to sleep. I ain't finished my training today." The following morning, the company woke, packed up camp and made their way, led by Gandalf, into the woods of Lothlorien. "Shut the fuck up, Gimli. You're breathing too fucking loud, man," snarled Goggins. "Yes, my lord." Just then there was a rustling of leaves behind them. "Contact right," shouted Goggins, readying his weapon. "Defense formation." It may have gone ill for both parties had the elves been unaware of the fellowships and Gandalf been unfamiliar with the folk of Lothlorien. "Peace. We are all elf friends," shouted Gandalf, his voice magically magnified. "We received word of your coming, Gandalf, but do not recognize some of your company, dressed as they are in such outlandish fashion and accompanied by a dwarf. I cannot give leave and allow such to cross the borders into our lands without word from the lady. This is the company that departed from Rivendell on an urgent errand that must not be delayed or hindered. The lady is aware of each of our company, I assure you, Haldir," responded Gandalf, recognizing the elf. Haldir considered for a moment before responding. "I understand. I will let all enter by exception, but the dwarf must go blindfold. No dwarf has passed these borders for hundreds of years, and I would not provide opportunity for one to spy out our lands." Gandalf did not appear pleased by the offer. "I must discuss your terms with my company," he responded before turning back and motioning for Goggins and Aragorn to join him. He relayed to them the elf's words. "What's wrong with Gimli?" asked Goggins, concerned. "He lacked clearance or some shit." "It is clear the elves do not easily let go of a grudge," Aragorn nodded. "They won't budge unless the Lady of the Woods gives her leave. Indeed, we are left with but 3 choices. Persuade Gimli to walk blindfold while we go free." "The dwarf will not take kindly to this treatment," conceded Aragorn. "His short ass will follow orders," assured Goggins. But Aragorn appeared unconvinced. "What are our other options?" "Other options are equally unappealing. We can either leave Gimli behind, undoubtedly he will find his way back to his own people in the mountains, or we can start a battle against the elves for the dignity of our friend." "We should ask Gimli. The choice should ultimately be his," advised Aragorn. And so they called Gimli over and filled him in on the situation. "Gimli, they ain't want your short ass spying out their land. These hillbilly tree-hugging motherfuckers are racist as hell. We're gonna need you to take one for the team, buddy." Unhappy though he was at being singled out in such a dishonorable manner, Gimli followed his master's instructions. He received a rare fist bump from Goggins, a sign of recognition and respect for his sacrifice. Goggins called forth Legolas and unceremoniously ripped from his shoulder a silver brooch, much to the elf's dissatisfaction. He fashioned this into a medal of sorts and presented it to Gimli. "Lieutenant Gimli, step forward," he shouted. The dwarf followed instruction, and the medal was pinned to the front of his armor. Goggins then raised a hand to his brow in military salute. "What is he doing?" asked the badly beaten Sam, peering at the theatrics through heavily bruised and puffy eyes. "He is conducting a warrior ritual in the fashion of his kind, honoring Gimli for his service and valor," responded Aragorn in reverence, taking a knee. "Thank you, master," responded Gimli. "You can get medals?" asked Pippin in an excited whisper. "I'm getting one too." "Haldir," the elf stepped forward. "If all is settled as agreed, then let us proceed." As agreed, Gimli was blindfolded and led ahead by the elves, while the others walked at their leisure, appreciating the beauty of Lothlorien. All were in awe at the beauty around them, except Goggins. "This ain't nothing, man. Y'all ain't never seen Yellowstone in the summer. Now that shit looks spectacular." Haldir paused, taken aback. "You are unimpressed by what your eyes see?" asked Haldir. The elf looked shook. "Man, all I see is some grass and these big-ass trees." I ain't no monkey. If this was America, they'd have chopped these motherfuckers down for furniture. At this, Aragorn turned and whispered to Gandalf, "Only one who has dwelt in the blessed realm and the undying lands of the Valor would stand as such, unimpressed by the pale imitations of Middle-earth." Gandalf grunted in agreement. "Back home, we got 380-foot redwoods," continued Goggins. "What is a redwood?" asked Haldir curiously. "Trees. Your trees stand taller than ours. Indeed, they are almost as tall as Orthanc." "Yeah, they tall as hell. Y'all motherfuckers need to watch Avatar. Tell me more of your land as we walk, friend. What do you want to know? Tell me of your people." "I'm from America. The streets are full of crackheads, hookers, and homeless." "What are these crackheads and hookers of which you speak? Are they similar to my kind?" "There is difference among the elves. There are the elves of Mirkwood, the tree elves of Lothlorien, and the elves of Rivendell. As such, you people are of different kinds and places." "I suppose they are," responded Goggins thoughtfully. "So the crackheads spend their time smoking crack, and the hookers, they be hoeing for cash and Gucci, sort of like a job. Hold on, let me show you." Goggins reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Turning it on, he began showing the elf pictures. "I ain't got signal here, man, but I got some pictures I can show you." The more Goggins scrolled, the wider the elf's eyes became. "This bitch's name is Shaniqua. This fat bitch is Kelsey, and this one's Brittany. She got that hawk too." "You know what I mean," said Goggins with a smirk, fist bumping the bewildered Haldir. "My friend, I would dearly like to visit your lands upon a day," said Haldir with an eager smile. "It appears to me Lothlorien is beautiful, but there is other beauty to be found out there in other places and people." "I know that fucking look," laughed Goggins loudly. "You need you a nasty bitch. Don't worry, I'ma hook you up, but only if you take the blindfold off my boy Gimli." Haldir gulped nervously, then looked around quickly at the other elves before nodding. "It will be done, Lord." "You have my gratitude, Master," said Gimli, bowing deeply after his blindfold was removed. "It ain't nothing, man." The remaining journey passed by in pleasant conversation between the elves and the company. "We're almost there," said Haldir at around midday. "The Lord and Lady are eager to meet you all." The world turned a radiant golden color as they approached the inner city of Lothlorien. "One of y'all bitches need to mow this motherfucking lawn," commented an unimpressed Goggins. "The grass grows freely here in the golden wood, long and fragrant. It is soft to the touch. Here, your animal will delight in grazing," responded Haldir, nodding towards Bill the pony, who indeed looked happy chewing mouthfuls of the thick grass as they walked. "We are here," announced Haldir, leading them around an enormous thick tree towards a truly impressive sight. "Now that's one big motherfucking tree," said Goggins as they approached. The company was led up a winding set of stairs wrapped around the tree as thick as a house. At the top they found a large pavilion, at the back of which were two ornately carved wooden seats, surrounded by branches of golden leaves and bark. There sat the Lord and Lady of the Wood, tall and slender, although young by appearance. Goggins could tell they were much older than they looked. "Damn, she looks good," thought Goggins, looking the elf lady up and down. But as he locked eyes with her, a voice spoke in his head. "Welcome," it said in an ethereal tone. "What the fuck?" muttered Goggins in surprise. He looked more closely at the lady and realized she was speaking to him telepathically. "This bitch is on some MK Ultra type mind control shit. I gotta fight it. What you want, bitch?" He responded in thought, and the voice responded. "I but seek to offer you an alternative path. Step aside, abandon the quest and receive all that your heart desires," she said. "Tell me, warrior, what is it your heart desires?" Goggins smirked. "Man, I would do things to you your man ain't never done in 1,000 years, he thought. What is it your heart desires to do to me? My heart? Nothing. I got other plans for you. 50 Shades of Lothlorien, he thought before letting his imagination run wild. Such was the vividness of his imagination. The lady faltered upon her seat, breaking eye contact for a moment. He is too powerful, she muttered, clutching her chest. Hearing this, her lord husband turned to her in concern. What is it, Galadriel? Do you once more wrestle in thought with the Dark Lord? It is nothing, she dismissed before resuming her gaze upon Goggins. Never have I heard or seen such flattery. Tell me more, warrior, she said, once again communicating telepathically. I'll scratch that 1,000-year-old itch you got, responded Goggins before resuming his explicit thoughts. We clapping cheeks tonight. At this, a visible shudder ran through the lady, at which her lord husband once again turned to her in concern. My apologies. We must postpone our welcome of you. The Lady Galadriel is greatly troubled and is in need of rest. With that, the company was led away to an enormous tent, made ready for them with beds. It seemed to me she was testing us, pretending to offer that which was not in her power to give, in exchange for setting aside the quest. Needless to say, I declined, said a restless-looking Boromir who had been pacing the tent for the last 20 minutes. Man, what I want is definitely in her power to give, laughed Goggins. At this, Gimli stood up dramatically. Alas, my eyes have gazed upon that which was fairest and pure beyond the imagination of us mortals. That bitch ain't as pure as you think, brother, said Goggins thoughtfully. She's a pure hoe. I'm telling you, Gimli, you gotta shoot your shot. Maybe she prefers them short and thick. I can tell you right now that Lord ain't touching no sides. Would that she had a beard. They heard Gimli trailing off, muttering to himself as one by one the company laid down on the comfy beds and fell asleep. Goggins woke sometime later to find it was still dark outside. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed movement at the mouth of the tent. He turned to look closer and saw Frodo and Sam sneaking out carefully so as not to rouse the others. These little bitches are up to some fuckery again, thought Goggins, slowly getting up to follow. As he followed, he was noticed and stopped by an elven guard who questioned where he was going. Man, I'm just trying to find a toilet. That elven piss you people drink just ran right through me, he replied, brushing the guard off to continue his pursuit. Goggins followed the hobbits' whispers until he turned into a large clearing and found them standing before the Lady of the Wood. Frodo, Sam, he shouted, scaring the hobbits. What the fuck you little bitches doing out of bed? But before they could respond, he cut them off. Get the fuck back to bed. Yes, Mr. Goggins, sir, they both repeated before scurrying back in fear. Once the two hobbits had left, Goggins' attention turned back to the elven lady. Damn, you look fine, girl, he began. You flatter me, my lord Goggins, responded Galadriel, looking eager but somewhat unsure of herself, as though mustering up the courage before a reckless move. I would continue our earlier discussion, if you are of a mind, she went on. This bitch is coming on to me, thought Goggins. We done talking, woman. Let's see what you've got. The following morning, the company were roused by an elf at the mouth of the tent. What was all that screaming last night? Asked Pippin, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. While you slept, the lady wrestled in thought with the Dark Lord. We found her early this morning, collapsed upon the ground, replied the elf. She was wrestling with something all right, muttered Goggins under his breath. She is resting now, while the Lord tends to her. Even in her younger days as an elf maiden, she has not felt such domination. It is a sign of darker times and the rise of Mordor. It will be days before she can once again walk these fair fields. The elf wept as he spoke. Curse the Dark Lord. The fair Lady Galadriel will remain heavy upon thought until she returns to full wellness, spluttered a teary-eyed Gimli. His beard was drenched. Goggins placed a consoling hand upon the dwarf's shoulder. She took a real pounding last night, brother, but I know she can't wait to go again. Such is the lady's spirit, nodded the elf in agreement to Goggins' words. After that, they spent many days in Lothlorien, at ease before their quest continued again. The screams of the lady were heard almost every night until the Fellowship's departure. The Fellowship spent many nights debating which direction the quest should take after Lothlorien. Should they make directly for Mordor or instead go first to Gondor in aid of Boromir's people? "What do you counsel, my Lord Goggins?" asked Strider one night, turning to Goggins after the others had once again failed to come to a consensus. "The motherfucking mission is our motherfucking mission," snapped Goggins. "I say we send those little bitches with Boromir." He nodded towards the hobbits, while the rest of us complete our objective to destroy the ring. "I agree," nodded Aragorn and Gandalf in unison, much to the dismay of the hobbits. "But I would counsel we hold off on deciding until we must. The Lord and Lady have furnished our company with boats, which will carry us far down the river, giving us more time to make a final choice. What is more, the Lady takes favor upon you, David. She has agreed to send a unit of elves to strengthen the battalion you trained in Rivendell. They will be leaving shortly for Rohan." "I did what I had to do," said Goggins, giving Gimli a sly wink. "Loosened her up for you, buddy." "Good," responded Gandalf. "If all is in order, we will depart tomorrow down the Great River." The following morning, as the Fellowship prepared for departure on the banks of the river, they were met by the Lord and Lady, who had prepared for each of them a gift. When it came to Goggins' turn, the Lady stepped forward and pulled a small, bright object from her robes. "That a stun grenade?" asked Goggins. "This is the Phial of Galadriel, within which is caught starlight. I gift it to you in the hope that it is a light for you when all other lights go out, and as a reminder of the Lady of the Golden Wood." "Would it not be better bestowed upon the ring-bearer?" asked her lord husband doubtfully. "It would not," replied the lady bluntly. Lastly, she turned to Gimli and asked the dwarf what gift he would have of her. The simple dwarf asked for a single golden hair from her head. "Why you gotta be such a fucking simp, man?" Goggins hissed in the dwarf's ear, as Galadriel unbraided a lock of her hair. "Ask to smash, man. Stop being a lil bitch." But before Gimli could alter his request, his window of opportunity closed as he received the hair. The lady turned her attention back to Goggins. "As my final gift to you, I would offer you the chance to look into my mirror, for what you see may be of benefit to you." Goggins accepted and followed the lady alone back to the clearing in which they had met on his first night in Lothlorien. They did not know if it was a trick of the wind, but those waiting for their return by the riverbank thought they could faintly hear the screams of the lady. "You screamed? Is everything okay?" asked the Lord in concern as his lady wife returned with Goggins 20 minutes later. "It was the mirror," responded Goggins quickly. "Things out of control, man, almost sucked out my soul." "I am spent," said the lady, looking dazed. She took a deep breath and steadied herself before seeing off her guests. "Farewell. My thoughts go with thee." There and back again. A Goggins Tale. Part 6. The Breaking of the Fellowship. Who's gonna carry the boats? They had been made to paddle non-stop the entire morning at the insistence of an overly energetic Mr. Goggins, who had maintained a constant stream of encouragement and profanity since departure. Such had been the effect of this bellowing and barking. The company found themselves subconsciously repeating his phrases as their aching arms pulled at the waters with the smooth elven paddles. Uncomfortable with the leisurely flow of the river, Goggins urged the company to paddle with ferocity. "Ah, Bill, you ought to have stayed in Bree," reminisced Sam, who had developed a fondness for the pony. Man, he gonna be eating good with those elven niggas, reassured Goggins, patting Sam on the back. Bill the pony had been left behind to graze the fragrant grass of the elves as their narrow boats were unfit to bear such a creature. Despite missing the serene calm of Lothlorien, the company were, for the most part, in high spirits. All but the dwarf remained upbeat. Galadriel, he whispered mournfully to himself, reminiscing long over the gentle elven lady. I know what you sayin', dude, consoled Goggins, overhearing Gimli's whispers as he shared the same boat as the dwarf and elf. I got fond memories of that bitch myself. As they continued down the river Anduin, the day turned to night. The Fellowship set up camp along the riverbank and slept. Goggins and Aragorn were on watch, their eyes scanning the darkness, when a rustle in the brush caught their attention. What was that? Aragorn asked, his hand instinctively going to his sword. Just keep your head on a swivel, Goggins hissed in reply. Slimy motherfucker could be hiding anywhere. Goggins reached into his pack and pulled out a stun grenade, holding it in his hand like a coiled viper ready to strike. When this goes off, be ready to grab that piece of shit, he whispered to Aragorn, his eyes never leaving the shadows. Gollum's slithering form darted out from the brush, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. Before he could scuttle away, Goggins hurled the grenade. The stun went off with a deafening bang, lighting up the trees in a blinding flash. At that exact moment, Gandalf, who had been quietly resting nearby, clutched his chest, gasping for air. By the Valar, he rasped, his face pale. Goggins was on him in a flash, his hands moving quickly. Shit, the motherfucking wizard's having a heart attack, he barked, immediately administering first aid. Aragorn rushed over, pulling out some leaves of Athalas, the healing herb of kings. These may help, he offered, reaching toward Gandalf. Goggins shot him a scathing look and barked, Man, put that shit away. You think your damn oregano can fix everything? This ain't no cold remedy. I'm trying to save this motherfucker's life. Aragorn sheepishly tucked the Athalas back into his pouch. Goggins tore open his backpack, pulling out a bottle of aspirin, which he swiftly crushed between Gandalf's lips. Not content with just the aspirin, Goggins smirked and whipped out a small adrenaline shot and injected it into the old wizard's arm. In seconds, Gandalf's eyes shot open, pupils dilated and wide, as he sprang to his feet with a surprising burst of energy. What power is this? The wizard exclaimed, practically vibrating with vitality. Without missing a beat, Gandalf spun around and, in a frenzy of unexpected vigor, began to deliver a flurry of strikes at the now recovering Gollum, whose disoriented state left him an easy target. The Fellowship gathered around, shaken by the explosive moment but relieved at their successful capture. Gollum, now thoroughly battered, lay groaning at their feet. Goggins glanced down at the pitiful creature, disgust on his face. Slimy ass bitch, he muttered, kicking a small amount of dirt towards Gollum's trembling form. Gollum was bound in ropes, mumbling incoherently about his precious, while Gandalf, still pulsing with renewed energy, paced back and forth, muttering about the strange power of Goggins' methods. Frodo, wide-eyed, finally broke the silence. Is Gollum dangerous? He asked, eyeing the creature warily. Dangerous? Nah, he's been sucking off those Mordor orcs, replied Goggins, leaning in toward Frodo. I say we cut his nuts off, man. He ain't gonna need them anyway. I don't think we should, answered Frodo. Why? You want to suck him? I knew you were a faggot. No, I just pity the poor creature. Fuck that. Gimli, bring your axe. Goggins shouted across to the dwarf. We gonna see what this little bitch is packing under that cloth. Frodo looked around for support as Goggins pinned down a terrified Gollum, but Gandalf had run off into the bushes and Aragorn raised no objection. Clearly, he did not like the creature. We cannot, he began an objection, but he was immediately shut down by Goggins. Man, shut your ass up. A gasp filled the clearing as Gollum's loincloth was removed. Damn, Looks like someone got there first, said Goggins awkwardly. He glanced around for a moment before covering Gollum again. I see why you all fucked up now, he said to the pitiful creature. Them LGBTs in Mordor made you trans. Gollum did not respond. He curled into a ball on the ground and began whimpering. That's fucked up, said Goggins to the group around him. They took that lil nigger's precious, all right. He stooped down and addressed Gollum in a softer voice this time. Man, that ain't right. I promise you, if you help us, we'll get you your revenge, and Gimli here, and his people will make you a new one. They're good with that type of shit. A new one, whispered Gollum hesitantly, uncurling himself to look at Goggins. We wants it. Damn right, man, a big prosthetic one. You can smash as much as you want then. Get you some of that orc pussy. The fear slowly left Gollum's face, to be replaced with a more hopeful expression. We swears to help you, master. Good. Where the enemy at? They are coming, master. A large group of Uruks. We saw them with the white hand. They're a day's march from us. Good. Gimli, untie his ass. Gollum, you're part of this company now. If you fuck up, I'ma have Gimli take your leg with that axe. Then we see how your ass climbs trees. Aragorn again looked in awe at his fellow ranger. Truly, he is more worthy of the kingship than I, he whispered to himself. Goggins then stood to address the company. Right, we got enemy inbound. I say we find higher ground and fortify. Then we must go to Amon Hen. It's half a day from here. We can make our defense there, said Aragorn. But there, we must also decide our direction. Do we head directly to Mordor or make our path via Rohan and Gondor? Any other suggestions? Asked Goggins. We could make directly for Gondor and attempt to outrun the enemy, suggested Boromir. Negative. These lil bitches would get outrun by little kids, responded Goggins, gesturing towards the hobbits. Looks like we're hitting the hilltop then. Get some rest. We head out at 0600 hours. The night's tension slowly dissipated as the Fellowship returned to their resting spots, though none would sleep quite as easily with Gollum now in their midst, resting for the moment by a tree. As dawn broke over the river Anduin, the Fellowship rose early, weary but resolute. Goggins, always the first to rise, stood by the tree where Gollum lay curled up, his watchful eyes scanning the horizon. He clapped his hands loudly, jolting the group awake. All right, rise and grind, bitches. We've got enemy coming in hot, and we ain't waiting around for those slimy fuckers to catch up, Goggins barked. We head for the hills. Move, bitches. Aragorn and Boromir began organizing the company while Goggins stood over Gollum, who uncurled himself and stretched, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and newfound devotion. You ready to get some payback, lil homie? Goggins asked, looking down at Gollum. Yes, we help. We helps the master, Gollum replied eagerly. Suddenly, a loud crashing noise erupted from behind them. They all whipped around, weapons at the ready, only to see Gandalf stumble out of the trees, branches, and twigs tangled in his hair and beard. His robes were torn, and he looked thoroughly disheveled. He staggered a few more steps, his eyes wide before collapsing face first into the dirt with a heavy thud. Goggins rolled his eyes, though there was a smirk tugging at his lips. Damn wizard must be coming down off that shot of adrenaline. The others rushed to Gandalf's side, while Goggins stood back, hands on his hips, shaking his head. Told you not to go running off like a crackhead. Aragorn knelt beside the wizard, checking his breathing. He's alive, but he's completely exhausted. Gandalf groaned, barely able to lift his head. By the Vala, I feel like I've been trampled by a Mumakil, he rasped, struggling to sit up, but he had no strength left. His limbs were limp, his usual dignified aura replaced by utter weariness. Get him into one of the boats, Aragorn instructed. He can't walk any further, and we still have to reach Amon Hen before the Uruks regroup. Sam and Boromir carefully helped lift Gandalf into one of the narrow elven boats, his body slumping against the side. His usually sharp eyes were now half closed, his energy drained from the unnatural surge of strength that had pushed him beyond his limits. As they prepared to leave, Frodo approached Goggins. "Is he going to be okay?" Frodo asked, concern etched on his face as he glanced at the weary wizard. Goggins waved a dismissive hand. "He'll be fine. He just needs to sleep it off, like a hangover from the hardest damn workout of his life." With Gandalf securely placed in one of the boats, the Fellowship resumed their journey. They paddled upriver toward the hills, the tension in the air still thick as they knew the enemy was close. Gollum, now swimming alongside one of the boats, muttered to himself, casting furtive glances at Frodo's pack, where the ring was hidden. Gandalf lay motionless in the boat, his breathing steady but deep, a few twigs still stuck in his hair. Occasionally, his hand would twitch, and he'd mutter something unintelligible, but otherwise, he was completely out of commission. "I've never seen Gandalf like this," Merry whispered to Pippin as they paddled. "He's usually the one saving us." "Well, after Mr. Goggins saved him with that special medicine, he ran as fast as a horse," Pippin replied. "He'll need to sleep for a week to recover from that." The boats continued to glide silently along the river, the forest on either side growing denser as they neared the hill of Amon Hen. Goggins kept his eyes on the surroundings, ever alert for any sign of the enemy. As they approached the foot of the hill, Goggins called out, "All right, time to stash the boats. We'll fortify the ruins at the top." The company dragged their boats onto the shore and prepared for the steep climb. Gandalf was still out cold, so Goggins lifted him in army fashion and carried the unconscious wizard up the hill. Despite the situation, the sight of Gandalf, the once mighty wizard, now limp and draped over Goggins' back, drew some chuckles from the group. Goggins, ever the motivator, took one last glance at Gandalf before turning to the rest of the Fellowship. Aragorn stooped to the ground, putting his ear to a rock and listened. He rose after a couple minutes. "The earth is disturbed by their accursed feet. There are very many of them, within a league of us. They will be upon us within the hour." "Right, let's fortify this bitch," Goggins announced, taking charge. He pointed to the dwarf and elf. "You two, scout the perimeter. Make sure nothing sneaks up on us. Frodo, Sam, you guys stay close to Gandalf." "They're close," said Legolas, returning from his scouting mission. Goggins cracked his knuckles, his eyes gleaming with the anticipation of battle. "Good, let's fucking wake Dumbledore." He leaned over Gandalf and administered another shot of adrenaline. Immediately, into the surprise of all, the wizard once again shot up just as Uruks appeared and charged without warning, their guttural roars filling the air. The Fellowship braced for impact, ready to defend their position. Forward leapt the wizard, staff forgotten. He drew his sword and with an enormous bellow fell upon the enemy with a ferocity that put Aragorn and Boromir to shame. They watched with amazement as he clove through the foremost Uruks. "Stay hard, motherfuckers. Harder than you've ever been," barked Goggins as the Fellowship rushed to meet the oncoming horde. The moment was chaotic, yet exhilarating. Boromir and Aragorn, momentarily stunned, swiftly joined the fray, their swords flashing as they fought back the tide of enemies pouring in. Legolas, from a vantage point higher up the ruins of Amon Hen, eagerly loosed bullet after bullet, finally having opportunity to test out the new weaponry Goggins had designed for him, each round finding its mark with deadly precision. Goggins, eyes wild with focus, stayed at the rear of the fight, barking orders like a general, motivating the Fellowship with his usual blend of profanity and intensity. "Ain't nobody dying on my fucking watch. You think these ugly-ass motherfuckers gonna take pity on your sorry asses? Hell no. Keep swinging, keep moving." Gandalf, now in the thick of the fight, moved like a whirlwind. The enemy had never seen anything like it. The wizard had become a force of nature, as if his adrenaline-powered fury gave him the strength of 10 men. He fought like a man possessed. Boromir, panting as he fought beside Aragorn, glanced over at Gandalf and muttered, What in Middle-earth did the Lord Goggins give him? Suddenly, an Uruk broke through the line and rushed toward Frodo, but the hobbits were ready. Their brutal training with Goggins had changed them. Sam, loyal as always, intercepted the Uruk's wide swing, allowing Frodo an opening to dart in and stab with sting, straight into its black heart. "The hobbit's bite is deep," cheered Aragorn, who had seen from the corner of his eye. With the tide turning against the enemy, their morale began to crumble. The fierce resistance of the Fellowship, bolstered by Goggins' leadership, and Gandalf's ferocity, was proving too much for the enemy to handle. One by one, they began to retreat, their fierce roars turning to panicked cries as they fled toward the woods. Amidst the chaos, Goggins caught sight of an Uruk stumbling over the rocky terrain, desperately trying to escape, and sprinted after him, leaping over fallen bodies and rubble. In seconds, he closed the distance, tackling the filthy creature to the ground. The Uruk let out a snarling growl, thrashing in an attempt to free himself, but Goggins quickly subdued him with a swift punch to the face, knocking him out cold. The company gathered around as Goggins dragged the unconscious Uruk into their midst. "Wake this motherfucker up," he growled. Gimli pulled out a water flask and splashed it over the creature's face. The Uruk jerked awake, his yellow eyes glaring with fury, but the sight of Goggins and the Fellowship standing over him quickly drained the defiance from him. "You got one chance, otherwise my man Gimli here's gonna start by taking a foot," said Goggins, gesturing menacingly to Gimli, who was busy wiping the blood from his axe. "Where you from, motherfucker? Who sent your ass?" The Uruk's gaze flicked nervously from Goggins to Gimli's blood-stained axe, then back to Goggins. His heavy breathing slowed, as if calculating whether to cooperate or face the dwarf's blade. "We march from Isengard. The White Hand, Saruman sends us," the Uruk hissed, trying to sit up. "We were ordered to capture the halflings and bring them to him." Goggins nodded slowly, crouching down to meet the Uruk's eye level, a smirk forming on his lips. "Where's the rest of your fighters?" The Uruk hesitated before growling, "More come. More follow. The land swarms with us. You won't escape." Goggins glanced over at Aragorn and Legolas, who exchanged worried glances. Then he looked back at the Uruk and let out a low whistle. "Man, I'll fuck your people up. You ain't no Taliban, and we bombed the shit out of them." He stood up. "All right, Gimli. Do your thing." The dwarf grinned wickedly, raising his axe, and with one swift motion, he brought it down, as promised, upon the Uruk's foot. The crunch of bone echoed through the clearing, and the Uruk let out a blood-curdling scream of agony. Gimli grunted with satisfaction, raising his axe again, preparing to put the Uruk out of his misery. As the Uruk writhed on the ground, Gollum, who had been lurking in the shadows, scuttled forward with surprising speed. His eyes gleamed with something darker than his usual. "We hates them, precious. We hates the nasty Orcsies." Before anyone could react, Gollum lunged at the creature with terrifying force, sinking his sharp teeth directly into the creature's groin. The watching company collectively winced, clenching as they turned from the scene, their faces twisting in disgust and pain as the Uruk howled in agony. Boromir winced, muttering under his breath, "What is this madness?" After Gollum had had his fill, the Uruk was left groaning and almost unconscious upon the ground. With a swift and brutal efficiency, Goggins finished the creature off, delivering a fatal blow to its skull with his boot. The lifeless body slumped to the ground. "Mission accomplished. Let's move out," said Goggins. The rest of the Fellowship exchanged uneasy glances. Even after all they had seen, this level of brutality still gave them pause. Frodo looked down at the scene, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. He caught Aragorn's eye, and for a brief moment, the ranger understood the hobbit's concern. "We must decide our course first," said Aragorn. "It is for the ring-bearer to decide," announced Gandalf. Now joining the company, he looked to have returned to his usual calm. "What happened to you, Gandalf?" asked Frodo, full of concern. "A madness took me, but it has passed," he replied, giving Goggins a small nod of gratitude before continuing his address of the group. There are but two choices, taking the ring directly to Mordor or going south through Rohan and Gondor. This decision rests with Frodo. Frodo did not provide an immediate response. He looked deeply troubled. Well, prompted an impatient Goggins. Give me 1 hour to decide. I need space to think. Gandalf nodded, and the little hobbit walked off alone towards the top of the hill. As Frodo walked away toward the peak of Amon Hen, with the weight of the decision bearing down on him, the Fellowship remained behind, watching him go in silence. Man, this ain't no time for motherfuckers to be second-guessing. We ain't fighting fucking ISIS here, shouted Goggins in frustration as he paced back and forth. Aragorn stood with his arms crossed, gazing at the distant horizon. We must respect Frodo's decision. The weight of the ring is his alone to bear. Boromir, still nursing the lingering temptation of the ring's power, kept a close eye on Frodo as he disappeared from view. His thoughts swirled with desire and doubt. He had been so close to seizing the ring before, and even now, the allure tugged at him. But the silence was short-lived. Boromir, unable to contain himself, quietly slipped away from the rest of the group and began following Frodo up the hill. His footsteps were careful, his breath steady as he closed in on the ring-bearer. Frodo, lost in his own thoughts, didn't notice Boromir approaching until it was too late. He turned just in time to see the man standing behind him, his expression a mix of desperation and longing. Frodo, Boromir said softly, I didn't mean to frighten you. I just wanted to talk. The ring, it is a gift, Frodo. Why not use it? Frodo backed away, his hand instinctively clutching the ring beneath his shirt. No, Boromir. You don't understand. The ring is evil. It cannot be used. Boromir's eyes darkened, his voice rising. It is power. Power that we can wield for good. Give it to me, Frodo. I can protect us. I can protect Gondor. Frodo, now frightened, turned to run, but Boromir caught his arm. Frodo, don't you see? I only want to protect my people. We can end this war. Let me go. Frodo cried, struggling and managing to break free. The ring cannot be used. Boromir lunged forward, his voice rising in anger. You're a fool if you believe that. It is a gift, and you would let it go to waste. A sudden rustle from behind provided enough distraction for Frodo to put on the ring and vanish. Goggins had been watching, ever the vigilant soldier, and now he appeared from the shadows, moving with silent precision. His eyes locked on Boromir, who had taken a threatening step toward Frodo. Oh, hell no, Goggins growled under his breath, recognizing Boromir's intentions. Without hesitation, Goggins leapt forward and tackled Boromir to the ground, using his Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills to subdue the much larger man. Boromir struggled, but Goggins was too fast, too strong. He quickly wrapped Boromir up in a rear naked choke and squeezed. I got some jiu-jitsu ready for your ass, snarled Goggins as Boromir thrashed beneath him. Tap out, motherfucker. But Boromir, unfamiliar with the concept of tapping out, continued to fight, his face turning red as he gasped for air. Goggins, sensing Boromir's confusion, tightened his grip, determined to put him out before he could do any more damage. Boromir's struggles grew weaker until, at last, his body went limp in Goggins' arms. Man, you gotta know when to quit. A few moments later, the rest of the Fellowship arrived, alerted by the commotion. Aragorn and Legolas rushed to Boromir's side, checking to make sure he was still breathing. Gandalf, who had now fully recovered from his earlier surge of energy, stood over the scene with a grim fury. Boromir began to stir, groaning as he came to. His eyes blinked open, and he found himself surrounded by the Fellowship. Fool, you let the ring take hold of you. Gandalf's gaze was stern as he addressed Boromir. He tried to steal the precious, hissed Gollum. Boromir, shame flooding his face, struggled to sit up. I'm sorry. I could not resist it. Its power, it was too much. Goggins crossed his arms, shaking his head in disgust. You a treacherous motherfucker. Mr. Frodo, shouted Sam in panic. Where's Mr. Frodo? He ran off like a little bitch. Sam, let's go find him. The rest of you, rehabilitate this sneaky fucker. Rendezvous back at the boats in 20 minutes. And with that, Sam and Gollum took off. Meanwhile, Frodo now stood at the edge of the great river, his heart pounding as he thought of his companions. His mind raced. The burden of the ring was too much for anyone else to bear. It had already started to twist the others. Boromir had almost taken it by force. No, he couldn't risk them falling to its power. This was his burden alone. His decision made, Frodo's hands trembled as he began stepping into the small boat, ready to push off and continue on the quest to Mordor, alone. But before he could set off, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. Goggins was there, his eyes blazing with rage. Frodo, where the fuck you going, man? Frodo froze, turning to face Goggins. The intensity in his friend's expression frightened him. I'm going to Mordor. Alone. The ring. It's too dangerous. It's affecting everyone. I can't let it destroy them. Destroy us. Goggins shook his head in frustration. You think that's an acceptable answer, soldier? Just fucking off into Mordor by yourself. You lost your motherfucking mind, son. You ain't hard enough for that. I have to. Frodo shouted, his voice strained, almost pleading. It's my burden. My responsibility. I cannot ask anyone to bear it for me. What burden? It's a fucking ring, man. You ain't carrying a 100-pound backpack across Afghanistan, motherfucker. Goggins stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. Don't give me that noble shit, you faggot. You think going off alone is going to protect us? You walking straight to the enemy ain't no grand sacrifice. You got shit for brains, son. You a selfish motherfucker. Frodo recoiled at the words, his eyes wide. Selfish. How? I'm trying to save you. Save all of you. But Goggins wasn't backing down. His fists clenched at his sides as he leaned in, voice low and dangerous. You think you're gonna walk your pansy ass into Mordor through an army of orcs, ring wraiths, and drop that evil cock ring in the fire like it's a fucking day trip? I can't ask you all to come with me, friend Goggins, Frodo stammered, his resolve cracking. Fuck you, man. Goggins spat. You think you're protecting us by going alone? You're setting us all up, you little piece of shit. You gonna get captured, and then we all fucked. All so you could play the fucking martyr? Frodo's hands were shaking now, his eyes welling with tears. Mr. Goggins, please, understand. Nah, motherfucker, Goggins snapped. You ain't going anywhere. Get your motherfucking ass back on land now. Frodo tried to speak, but no words came out. Goggins stepped even closer. You ain't dragging the rest of us down with you by pulling this solo bullshit. Not when I got me some elf bitches to smash when I get back. For a long moment, there was silence between them. Slowly, Frodo lowered his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. I didn't mean. Man, you ain't right for this ring-bearer shit, said Goggins, looking down upon the little hobbit in disgust. That fat motherfucker Sam got balls twice the size of yours, man. Frodo nodded weakly. They were joined by the rest of the company as they dragged the boat back onto the shore. All oblivious to what had transpired moments before. What is the ring-bearer's decision? Asked Gandalf. But it was Goggins who answered. We take Boromir's ass back to Gondor first, then approach Mordor from the west. So be it, responded Gandalf, bowing his head. The ring goes south.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey and are eager for more wild fan fiction, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your fellow fans, and subscribe for more episodes. And if you're as enchanted by the idea of Middle-earth meeting Hogwarts as we are, make sure to check out our series exploring this magical crossover. Your support brings these worlds to life. Until next time, keep the fantasy alive.